Welcome to the Dave Palma Show, the podcast that revives, restores, and awakens your innermost capabilities.
You have the training and the talent to succeed, but do you have the guts to fail?
I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Find your path to success through the journey of those who have succeeded. And now, your host, Dave Palma.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palma Show. In this episode, I have someone who's a published author of a book, True Humility, Finding Peace and Balance in Today's Modern Society. He shares insights on the power of humility and how to find happiness by forgoing a self-focused lifestyle. He endured racism, bullying and ostracism throughout his youth, attending 7 schools in 7 years. He sought peace through wanderlust and social media, only to suffer greater mental health problems. In his book, he shares the secrets of practicing true humility, offering actionable insights, tools and activities to attain peace and balance amid the pressures of modern life. Gavin Seah, welcome to the Dave Palma Show.
Thank you so much, Dave, and thank you for the very warm introduction. And I'm excited to be on your show today.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's really an honour to have you on the show. And I know you're a much younger version to me, but generally, I've experienced both, bullying from a young age, childhood, if you like, bullying, not only in the school place, it's been around me, and racism, especially in the UK. I grew up in the UK, in the 70s and 80s. It was really, really rife and blatant.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, some of I've got a politics degree, so some of the kind of colonial effects that have been left from post-colonial days is racism, really, which obviously must have been quite rife in those days, during colonialism, and that's where it's probably come from. And I know your background's Singapore, so that was a British colony, and obviously yes. they were very strong. Your leader was very strong on racism there, wasn't he? It was actually written in the law as well, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. And I have also spent a lot of time living in Melbourne, Australia, because of my father's work. So I found myself moving between Singapore and Melbourne, Australia growing up. Wow. And in fact, I attended 7 schools in 7 years between the age of 10 and 17 in both Singapore and Melbourne. So that was when the struggles that I went through became the story of my life today. And 7 schools in 7 years is not an easy journey for many, especially if you're at that age where you're still trying to find yourself, trying to find your identity, and having to deal with and cope with the different struggles that I've gone through, and the cultural shifts, the different syllabus of subjects that you have to learn, and the new people that you're meeting almost on a yearly basis. So it was not easy growing up.
No. Well, tell us your story. I mean, obviously I've got my own version, which obviously can, as I say, the colonial side will match up because you follow the English curriculum, and my daughter's following it. Actually, she's been homeschooled.
Yes, that's
Some
right.
of the books are from Singapore, but it's following the GCSE kind of curriculum, which is the British curriculum.
Yes.
So tell us about your struggles and what happened from a young age. Obviously, as I say, I probably can relate to some of it,
For sure.
Yeah.
So like I've shared just before, going through 7 schools in 7 years, because of my father's work, I found myself having to chop and change almost on an every year basis. And that can only do most kids harm growing up, because you need to be in a place where you have stability, with regards to your social circle, the way that you perceive yourself when you're going to school. That can always change, especially when you're growing up. So for me, I recall one time in high school, and this was my time in Melbourne, Australia, when I was attending a local school. I recall one incident that had really best summed up the struggles that I was going through at school. So one time, as I was about to leave the school field at my recess break, I saw a boy twice my size charging towards me at full speed, and a second boy locking my arm, and a third boy was crouching behind me. And as the boy that was about to reach me, I was pushed over with such great impact over the 2 boys that were standing behind me, and I landed on my right wrist. And right in that moment, I knew that I had broken something. I fractured something. And I was lying in the school field in so much pain, and 4 or 5 of my classmates stood around me in a circle, laughed at me, and proceeded to walk away. And I think that really best summed up one of the many struggles that I went through, because I found myself asking almost on a frequent basis, what should I do to find my happiness? If this was to persist, how can I best overcome these struggles that I find myself in? So that really summed up my struggles growing up. And there is a silver lining, because I did overcome those challenges, and hopefully through my book, True Humility, more individuals around the world will be able to discover the amazing stories as well as values that I was able to learn later on in my early 20s. So that's in a nutshell some of the key things that happened in my earlier life. So maybe you can share with us about how those also resonate with you as well.
Yeah, sure, fantastic. And this was in the Australia school or Singapore? I mean, because you moved to Australia at a young age, so probably not so much in Singapore.
Yes, so one of the struggles that I have just shared happened in Melbourne, Australia, but I did face some difficult moments in school in Singapore. For example, when I came back from Australia, when I did find myself back in Singapore across the 7 schools in 7 years, whenever I had returned, I was called names in Singapore schools by my classmates like Ching Chong, Aussie boy, and that's always challenging to accept because you never find it easy when you step into a new class and people associate you with something you're not fully from the background in. So I had only just spent a few years in Australia, but having been termed and called an Aussie boy, it's always difficult. So that was what I had also faced in school in Singapore as well.
Yeah. I mean, the Ching Chong reference would apply to both countries then, you're saying?
Exactly. I faced both.
Australia.
I faced both of the name callings in Singapore and in Australia as well. But this was mainly put on my perspective when I was living in Australia. So there were these different circumstances that I found myself in growing up.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I mean, in the 70s, there was, I mean, I had a close friend when I was in primary school. I think you call it primary school as well, because
yes,
even Australia has the British kind of model of a school system, so it's not elementary, we say.
That's right.
Where, I had an Italian friend and a Chinese friend that I hung around with, and a couple of black friends as well, but, they're on the surface, One was a bit of a comedian, the other one was sort of more into football culture, which contained a little bit of bullying language, but
yes.
So, I heard some of the comments being said about both their countries, the Italian and more the Chinese, like that kind of, language.
Exactly.
So, the bullying was directed at me also because I had diagnosed dyslexia, which made it worse with the bullying,
Wow.
So this is in the 70s, as I say, but it doesn't seem these things gone away because we have serious problems with racism now that looks the same as 30 years ago, and even 60 years ago or 50 years ago, So
yes, I think increasingly we're seeing this getting more prevalent because of social media, and in the times that we live in, we have to see it coming to our horizons almost on a regular basis, and that's always hard to accept. Having gone through the struggles that I've gone through, I hear and I feel when people tell me these stories, I feel their pain, I feel, and I can relate to the stories that they've shared with me as well. So definitely when I am writing and sharing my story, I hope that people can resonate with the challenges that I've gone through. And beyond that, how do you deal with that and how do you thrive in spite of challenges like facing racism and ostracism growing up?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, 7 schools, that's quite a lot. I mean, I went through a couple in my secondary school days, only because they put me in a special school, not understanding the undiagnosed dyslexia, as they didn't really in the 70s. There wasn't enough. That was understandable, and then I kind of recovered from that and got put in mainstream because I had enough attention given to me to correct some of the kind of issues of
Sure.
You're not spelling that, you're not pronouncing that right, or whatever. And then the primary school was always the same for me because my parents didn't move around because of their job. But that is quite common for some people. They're traveling business people. They're in a company where the corporate might send them to 2 months in one place, or
Exactly.
an ambassador that might go to one country as an ambassador and another one after 4 years. Which is kind of like a termly thing. So some people have to travel with their job and bring the kids, with them, as your parents probably did, maybe.
Yes.
I don't know, so that's
Because
not uncommon in that
yeah.
sense, but the change does have to be monitored, doesn't it, for the kids?
Yes, and if it's not managed in an appropriate and effective way, I think that's where some kids could be exposed to more dangers of anxiety, fear, as well as hopefully not going down to the path of depression. But some kids do slip into that because of
Yes.
being subject of different changes. And sometimes change can be a negative if it's not handled and managed properly as well.
Yeah. So tell us what it was like going through the change for yourself. I mean, so for some listeners that could be, going through
Yes.
even 2 or 3 schools. As I say, my changes wasn't as much. It was just kind of more for me personally, rather than my parents moving around.
I'm happy to share. In fact,
sure.
I think managing change is one of the most challenging things. And even having heard this quote being shared with me throughout my schooling years, be the change you want to see in this world. How do you turn that into something positive? Gandhi, exactly. How do you turn that into something positive? It's not always straightforward. It's not an easy step. And there are many moving parts when you're talking about making positive change. But I think for me, growing up, it was really seeing that in the way that I perceive myself, who do I see in the mirror every day? Do I see Gavin, who is someone that is fueled by his struggles, his challenges? Or does he see how these struggles and changes can be used to inspire and impact someone? So I think that's how I perceive the struggles and manage those changes positively, and trying to make small little enjoyments across my everyday, across my every week. For example, if I'm able to make a new friend at one school, for me, that's a small victory. Maybe for some, they will not celebrate something like that, but for me, I would make those small little points that in each season of my life, I want to gain something positive out of that journey. And little by little, I was able to rediscover my peace and happiness, and that translated to being able to find those answers later on in my early 20s. So managing change for me is really inserting and embedding that you want to make a positive response to difficult challenges that you find yourself in. So instead of finding yourself complaining about why did this happen to me? Why is something challenging always happening and coming into my life? Instead, you tell yourself that, hey, this challenge that I'm going through today is the reason why I would be a more resilient and more peaceable person in the future, that people can hopefully be inspired by, of how you're able to overcome those challenges you find yourself in. So that's how I manage change. It's about embedding some positive response to the challenges that I find myself in.
Yeah, great. That's great. Yeah, great kind of concept there you've got in terms of managing that. I mean, the only thing is that obviously, a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, sort of before they sort of go to more senior school, will they understand managing change like that? I mean, how can that be, introduced to a child that young? Does that come from the parents, the teachers?
It's a good point that you have brought up, because it is important that when we are sharing truths about how they can manage change in a positive manner, that we have to keep it relatable. We have to keep it palatable, such that the kids would be able to respond positively. So in recent months, I've been speaking at different high schools in Singapore. They call it secondary schools in this part of the world. Yeah. And in speaking to youth, I think I take a lot of care to be able to break it down and unpack what managing change positively means. And for me, I start off with something really simple, telling them and assuring them that it is okay not to be okay all the time. Because more often than not, what happens in the everyday schooling life is that we would go through, or we see children having those moments where they tell themselves, because of something negative that happened at school, whether is it because of an exam that they prepared for many months and did not score the results that they wanted to get, and they feel really upset. When they tell themselves, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to overcome those challenges that I find myself in, more often than not, it is because they have entered into a weakness-focused mindset. How to work them towards managing those change positively is to encourage them that, hey, when you look yourself in the mirror every day, what do you see? Do you see your strengths as much as your weaknesses? And if you do, what are those reasons that would get you to come back to make positive change? It could be turning to your strength, like I have resilience, I have courage, I have my hardworking attitude. I can get through those difficult times, but I need to be patient. So it's important that as we speak to youths, especially from my perspective, I come from a point of view that it relates to them, it carries them towards a place that they feel like there is an opportunity to get out from the difficult challenge they find themselves in. So that's how I would share with youths in today's modern context.
That's great. It's fantastic you go into schools, and I do some voluntary work as well, but more, it's called Inspiring the Future.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and it's more aimed at people in certain different various professions. It's more like, if it's secondary school, it's going in there on their careers day. If it's primary school, it's giving them a taste of inspiring them to what they could be, that kind of thing. So
Exactly.
yeah.
It's great work that you're doing as well.
Yeah. I mean, I do try and blend in the work I'm doing around resilience and stuff like bullying and harassment and racism and that sort of stuff. But I try not to get too political, even though I've got a degree in politics. I leave that for the grown-ups who should know better.
Yes.
Anyway, okay. Well, let's turn to your book now. Anyway, now that we're talking more on actually how we're delivering it, we can go through the introduction and the 8 chapters that I can see here, and kind of give a taster. I don't want to obviously talk about the whole lot of. I know it is good to kind of share a few chapters as part of your marketing, of the book, but we can give an overview and go through the chapters.
Perfect. That's
so the introduction is development of the self.
Yes, that's right.
So give us an overview there.
The first chapter really takes readers through the process of, have you ever been finding yourself in a place where you are asking questions like, what can I do to find my happiness? When can I ever find my peace and identity in my life? And turn into the modern society trends like having a YOLO mindset, you only live once mindset, or turning to social media to depend on the resources that would encourage you to find your peace and happiness, and slipping into hopefully not the other spectrum, which are self-destructive trends like having a FOMO mindset, a fear of missing out, as well as FOLO. FOLO stands for a fear of living offline. So a perfect example that I can give is what happens when someone were to tell you today that I'm going to take away your mobile device for the rest of the day. Immediately you feel a sense of detachment. You feel a sense of loss. You feel like you can't live without your virtual identity. And that's where the modern perils of what times we live in is such that we have to deal with the additional layer of our physical and virtual identity. And that's not always easy. So in coming to that place, I think often enough what I found was that when I'm engaging with youths as well as young adults, many individuals find themselves going from a YOLO mindset to experiencing FOMO, going through social media dependency and experiencing FOLO. And where is the midpoint where you ask yourself, if these things are not encouraging me to find my peace and happiness, when can I ever find that from an external and outer of these self-focused trends? And that's where development of the self chapter allows individuals to guide themselves as they navigate the modern trends that we find ourselves in. So in a nutshell, that's the key things that we discussed in chapter 1.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I think we just froze a bit there, but
Can you hear me loud and clear now?
yes, I can hear you now. Yeah, no problem.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, okay, we just got that first chapter in anyway, just before the freeze there. Thank God
Exactly, perfect.
Modern technology can kind of keep us online like that. But like you say, if you're offline, these things won't happen as well. So there you go. That's an example, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's called what? The development of the self and selfish behaviours. That's chapter 1, is it?
Exactly. So chapter 1 really dives itself into how individuals can navigate themselves whilst living in the modern society, where a large focus has been on self-focused trends like a YOLO mindset, like wanderlust, social media dependency, and how these things sometimes can rob us away from experiencing true balance, peace, and our joy in our life. As a result of going into these mindsets, some individuals would experience the negative effects like FOMO, a fear of missing out, or FOLO, which stands for a fear of living offline. As a result of that, individuals would find themselves almost on a vicious cycle. going from I want to be happy, practicing these trends that I've just shared, and slipping into I'll never find my peace and happiness. I'm not sure what to do with my time anymore. I can never find that because I don't have the answers in the modern society today. So if that happens and you're frustrated, what can you do? So that sets the good foundation of what chapter 1 is all about. Selfish behaviors robbing us from true peace and balance in our lives.
Excellent. So chapter 2 is titled Pride.
Yes, that's right. So pride really takes us through to the next part. So we talk about trends, the overarching bird's eye picture of where our social ecosystem has been largely focused on in the past 5 to 10 years. Going into pride is really focusing on the definition of one's 100% or close to 100% of overly focus on one's strengths and less to low focus on one's areas of improvements or weaknesses. So I think we can all relate to this. Have you met someone that has always been so assured of themselves, overly confident, almost moving towards arrogance and cocky or brashy attitude? Often enough, in those individuals' minds, they have that mindset that I have everything at my fingertips to be the person I need to be. As a result of that, sometimes they can go into a mindset of full self-gratification or full self-focused endeavors. And that sometimes can create a sense of unhappiness and a sense of purposeless as well, because you have set that ceiling for yourself that cannot be broken through except for you changing the parameter of change. So that's the focus on pride, where I focus on one's focus, overly focused mindset on strengths, and how sometimes that can rob individuals from the balance and identity that they're hoping to seek for, that's leading towards a positive change, a positive response in the long run. So that's in a nutshell what chapter 2 is discussed and talks about.
Yeah. Well, I think the next couple of chapters after that, false humility and true humility, we can do together. You could probably tell, explain
sure.
the difference between the both, what they are, the difference.
Yes,
between.
happy to do that. So false humility here is really centered on the definition on one's over focus on weaknesses and less to no focus on strengths. Over here, the definition is really critical because it allows individuals to realize what false humility is all about. So it's not a false sense of modesty when someone tells you that, hey, you're doing really good, and you turn the person down in saying that that's not true, there's a lot to learn, but in your heart, you feel those moments of pride. Over here, we're focused on when someone tells you that you're not good enough and you agree with that, you're probably in trouble because that probably means that you have already accepted the other spectrum that we probably don't want you to go into, which is an over focus on your weaknesses. And in this case, in worst cases, individuals could fall into mild or severe depression, and that's always dangerous. In True Humility in chapter 4, I talk about what does it mean to wake up and start your day with a balanced attitude of your strengths and weaknesses. So here the center focus is on one's 50% strengths and one's 50% weakness. So realize that in your life, in who you are and who you can be, we all have these areas of strengths to continue to add value to people around us. And we have areas of improvements to continue to add to our growth as well as to nurture and be better. So it's coming to that balanced attitude on a daily basis that sets a good foundation for positive mental well-being and hopefully good mental health. So that's the focus of chapter 3 and 4.
Yeah, wow. And chapter 5 is something I try to work on, especially when I was going through a lot of stress and obviously the build-up of stress while working as a firefighter over the years and not knowing about it. Obviously, there's a lot of work being done now about it.
Yes, that's right.
The demons, they describe it as the demons inside, where I do have some good moral values, but, suddenly I've lost this moral compass, meaning, the stress has caused you to maybe drink more or do something out of the kind of depression of
yes,
you shouldn't be doing, So
I can
tell
relate
us
to
your
that.
version. Yeah. Tell us your version of it.
Yeah, sure. So where I'm coming from in chapter 5, it builds on the chapters that are coming before that. So chapter 1 to 4 leads in really nice to chapter 5 because we have a good idea of what our core values, our primary values are sitting at. And as a recap, we talk about true humility, false humility, as well as pride. So having this good understanding then leads into how we make good decisions every single day, hopefully as much as possible, centered on our moral values. And in chapter 5, I talk about how to make our decision-making process driven from our values. So say, for example, have you realized that your beliefs are a reflection of your values? So what you believe and what you value eventually would come together in hopeful, good synergy. So for example, I believe that I can go through this circumstance that I find myself in because I have true humility, a balanced attitude to learn from my mistakes and to grow towards the areas that I can add value from. So in chapter 5, we talk and use many case scenarios, examples to be able to relate to our readers out there, hopefully struggling in their circumstances that they find themselves in, but through the exercise and through the work that they're doing to self-reflect, they can get through that with the right moral compass to guide them through that process.
Yeah, well, that's a good kind of snapshot of that chapter, which obviously is very important. Really, it's
Yes.
that area, and good to do a lot of work around that. Really, especially when you feel you're on your own, and want to be accepted or something like that. And we've all been there, really.
Exactly.
Well, when I say we've all been there, I mean I'm sure there's people that probably are real hardcore bullies in a very powerful position like Donald Trump that maybe not, because it's the character of his don't really care anyway, So, but anyway,
Yes,
let's not
true.
go down that route. As I say, I'm trying to leave politics a little bit away from this. It's hard to when we talk about racism and bullying, but okay. So here's it's chapter number 6, which obviously I kind of see myself as trying to be, generally all the time. It's the humble and the positive self.
Yes. Chapter 6, it really brings us towards, now that we've understood the key focus and foundational principles around true humility, which is having that balanced identity, knowing when is the right time to rely on your strengths as well as to play to your weaknesses and its advantages as well. Having that good understanding leads you to now be able to be working towards a positive self. So coming to a positive self, it really starts with having that abundance mentality where you realize that it's more blessed to give than to receive. It's more of unconditional, stepping outside of yourself, having that other-centered attitude that eventually fuels your entire day. So that's a different mindset and shift away from having to work towards becoming the best self, but sometimes falling short and feeling like the worst. Every single day we're working towards becoming a better person, keeping to that humbleness attitude, and eventually positive emotions would find you. I think often enough in our society we talk about working towards positivity rather than working towards becoming a better person and allow positive emotions to find you. And that's what I found to be really helpful when I discovered about true humility. And chapter 6 would really hone itself into how to be a humble and positive self.
Yeah. I mean, some people's got that in them anyway, but they can still benefit from learning more about how they can do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Chapter 7 is obviously something that I wouldn't say contradicts, but I try and encourage people to do some work on themselves in terms of meditation, which obviously you need to be able by yourself to do things like that.
Sure.
But obviously I've been a community person myself and trying to, obviously as working as a firefighter, you're working for your community and put your life on the line. How selfless is that? It's kind of, yes, it's the message is to, be selfless, but give us your version on that chapter 7.
Yeah, sure. So I think often enough, as you're wanting to take the next step forward, beyond finding your inner self peace and balance, it is quite nice if you're able to spend some time in the community. So the focus on the community and not on yourself, it really opens the horizons and broadens the horizons for some individuals who have not considered this as a pattern of actions that they could take, as well as consider how others can also help them to find peace and happiness. So often enough in my everyday life, I found it to be quite nice to be able to help someone. Maybe not all the time, but in opportunities that I find myself in, when I'm able to help someone, I would always return back feeling like I've left some sort of legacy for someone else. And in a way, that is something that feels more fulfilling than spending my time the same number of hours every day scrolling social media and going to bed and repeating that cycle, a rinse and repeat cycle. So having that opportunity to broaden my horizons from that perspective has helped me in some ways to further harness a true humility mindset. So that's what chapter 7 focuses itself on, and that's my, hopefully, a nugget of wisdom and perspective that I'm able to share with my readers.
Yeah. That certainly makes sense in terms of what I've done with my life, but I'm still carrying on doing it, I hope, with the coaching and everything else, and doing the voluntary work, in schools like yourself, so.
Yes.
So let's look at the final chapter, then making the world a better place, which obviously, I can resonate with for definite, even with my podcast. And then, so tell us about how people can do that and how, obviously you're doing it as well.
Yes. I think when we close our two eyes, what do we picture the world to be? Is it a world filled with different people doing their own individual paths and will never come together to collaborate, to innovate, and to make the world a better place? Or do we start that first action of me being the proactive ones first and going forth to make changes around the people in my life in small ways and hopefully in big ways as well, to be able to shape and reshape people's life as well as perspectives. So it's about making those little things that sometimes can add to a larger ecosystem shifts. For example, when you see your colleague at work, do you tell your colleague that, hey, I think you look really good today, and there are so many things that I think I can learn from you. Often enough, those small little things that we're leaving behind, pockets of inspiration, pockets of hopeful, positive energy that you're passing on to someone, can create that humble, positive ecosystem around us. And eventually, hopefully, that would look like a positive environment that we all can enjoy and live in our society. So it ends off really nice because humble, positive ecosystem cannot start and end with ourselves. It has to be something larger, it has to be something bigger, and that often looks best when more people are stepping themselves into this mindset, into this practice, and let's make the world a better place together. So that's a nice end to our chapter 8.
Absolutely. I like that ending as well. So, and certainly with making the world a better place. What are you doing these days yourself? I mean, obviously you mentioned about going into schools, and you've got your book now, which has just been released in October, I think.
Yes, that's right.
So what's your?
Yeah, I'm working on a few things, but the key focus area for me, closer to home, closer to Singapore, where I'm residing in, there has been a large focus around mental well-being in Singapore. Large bulk of that is because of the rising issues that are creeping out from pre-COVID-19 and during the COVID-19 situation, with isolation, with the chopping and changing in school syllabus, as well as the pressure that's coming from internal systems like family support, societal brewing concerns coming out from the difficult challenges that we have around the restrictions as well. I think there are a lot of different sectors in Singapore that are struggling in its different variety of ways. And in the schools, I think the main focus is on the youths. A lot of them are struggling in dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety, dealing with the fear of the future, as well as having too many disruptions to their day-to-day rigor, which can only impact how they feel, how they act, and how they behave. So a lot of the efforts that I'm spending in the schools today takes up a large bulk of my time in a week, and much of the focus is on how true humility can encourage students and youths to find their peace and balance, have that mindset that I have the courage and resilience to get through the difficult times I'm in, equip them with tools and strategies to be able to get to the next step and to remain positive in spite of challenging times. So that's a good part of my week that's spent. Aside from that, I'm always writing, I'm always speaking at different panels on radio stations in Singapore. Have been doing various interviews and other podcast channels as well. So that's always exciting. And like yourself, I've been also sitting on panel on writers festivals closer to Asia as well. And most recently, sharing about how writing is a healing process, how writing and the facts that we're able to channel our negative emotions into something that's positive has been really encouraging for many of my viewers in this part of the world as well.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, obviously, with this podcast obviously being global, it's not only heavily in Asia where I've been based for the last 6-7 years, but I do have a huge part of listenership in the USA, which probably has the same kind of issues going on there. And,
yes, I think
UK,
the concerns,
concerns
that we're seeing, exactly, the concerns we're seeing is globalized. It's not only in different pockets of the world. I think mental well-being and mental health continues to be a really big concern, especially because it's growing bigger in a variety of ways. And there's so many different pockets of people that are facing challenge in different variety of ways. And it's important that people like ourselves who are out there inspiring and making change do our part to continue to give that positive energy as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great you coming on the show and that you've articulated yourself very well. I can see that, you're doing very well. I've been to Singapore once, I think it's 2019. Wonderful. Yeah, 2019, just before I think it's November
before
2019.
The lockdown.
Yeah. And then I went to China twice, where that hospital collapsed.
Yes. Wow.
During the COVID.
Were you close to the site when you were there?
No, I was in Guangzhou, which is where that hospital collapsed, where they had the COVID patients in 2020. But I was there in November 2019, so the COVID just happened just as I left. It must have started, in Wuhan, then. So I probably got out just about in time, Then I had to stay in the Philippines because there was a volcanic semi-eruption near where I lived, a small volcano. It's quite famous around the world, that volcano.
Yes.
And we had to it's semi-locked down there because of the kind of stuff from the volcanic eruption in the atmosphere, and then all of a sudden we had to full lockdown because of the COVID about a month later. So I got used to face masks and stuff like that. Face mask is normal anyway in Asian kind of
yes, it is
countries anyway. So
exactly. Over here in Singapore, we would have to mask on during this period, and that's something that we have learned to live with as well. Yeah,
and Manila especially is, and China, and there's a lot of pollution. As you know, we've got the COP26 going on. Talking about pollution and that kind of Asia. Well, China in particular, had the biggest kind of together with America, but America don't really sort of use face mask or look at it that way, whereas China's looking at it that way,
Yes, that's right.
Or the people on the ground,
I think importantly, it's protecting ourselves during this time and keeping safe wherever we are in the world, and hopefully keeping our sanity as well at the same time.
Exactly. And talking about face masks, self-care is the key word that people
that's right.
banded around.
Yes.
Post-COVID, or during COVID and post-COVID, it's so important, the self-care side.
It is. So, it's important.
What you and I is doing is obviously going to hopefully make a difference in that area, and it's going to be more and more needed.
Exactly.
So keep it up, and thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Tell people how they can get hold of you and your book and your
Sure.
work.
So wherever you are around the world, if you're able to hop onto any of the digital ebook platforms, you can find my book at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many of the other stores that you can find close to your city as well. And you're able to also find me at my Instagram channel at The True Gavin, as well as on Facebook at Soy of Humility. So I hope that you'll be able to touch base with me, share your stories, and I'll be happy to connect as well.
Excellent, Gavin, it's been a great pleasure talking to you on my show, and for you to share your story with my audience today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts, or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.